He waved a $100 bill at her like trash, then begged her for mercy 2 days later in silence. The marble floor of the Pacific Heights ballroom gleamed like glass, and for a moment, it felt like Naomi James didn't exist. Kneeling in her blue uniform, shoulders tight with exhaustion, she moved in practice circles, polishing away invisible smudges before the first guests arrived. She wasn't supposed to be seen. That was the job. Quiet, invisible. But Naomi wasn't just another custodian, she was Dr. Pound. Naomi James, a 30-year-old optical engineer with patents pending and a stealth startup barely clinging to life. Every swipe of that cloth was funding another week of RD, another shot at the future. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Because while she scrubbed champagne residue off a floor she'd never be invited to dance on, she heard polished shoes stop behind her. Then a voice's move, loud, entitled cut through the silence. "You always work this hard at parties?" She looked up slowly and saw him. Weston Crane, billionaire tech mogul, gala host. And apparently, the kind of man who mistook a cleaning badge for a VIP pass. She opened her mouth to correct him, but he kept talking. Weston Crane's eyes scanned Naomi like she was an acquisition target. "I don't recognize you," he said, smiling with the kind of practiced charm that makes cameras love you and assistants quit. "Let me guess, early investor in Varian. Or maybe stealth mode like me." Naomi stood up slowly, unsure whether to laugh or correct him. Her cleaning badge was tucked beneath the tray she'd just set down. All he saw was confidence in her stance and quiet in her voice. She tried to clarify, "I'm actually working the event," but that just made him grin wider. "Oh, you're working it all right." He leaned in. "How about a private tour? Just you, me, and a bottle of Saint Laurent up in my penthouse lab." Naomi's stomach twisted. She shook her head firmly. "No, I'm here on the janitorial staff." For a split second, his face faltered. Then something shifted, his smirk curdled into disgust. He stepped back, pulled a crisp $100 bill from his wallet, and let it flutter to the floor like trash. "Well then, be thorough down there, floor girl, unless you want to earn real money upstairs." Laughter echoed from nearby. She turned and saw half a dozen onlookers, phones raised, grinning. Naomi froze. Every part of her wanted to disappear, but she wouldn't give them the satisfaction. She bent down silently, not to pick up the $100 bill, but to finish wiping the floor with slow, deliberate strokes. Weston's laughter rang louder now, like a man drunk on his own status. One of his guests muttered, "Damn, she's actually doing it," followed by another voice chiming, "Get his face in the shot." The gleam of phones caught Naomi's eye. Half the ballroom had turned into a stage, and she'd been cast as the punchline. But what they didn't know, what none of them could imagine, was that Naomi had a meeting scheduled in less than 48 hours with Crane Enterprises, not as a janitor. As a CEO, her startup, Lucent Guard, had just been shortlisted for a multi-million-dollar tech integration glass. So smart, it could tell who you were by how you breathed. The irony wasn't lost on her. They couldn't see who she was because they'd never even looked. But she had seen enough. Enough faces. Enough arrogance. Enough evidence. Naomi didn't say a word as she stood up. She just looked at Weston once, eyes calm and cold, then walked away. She had work to do. The elevator doors closed behind her with a quiet hiss, cutting off the noise of the party like a blade. Naomi stood still for a long moment, heart pounding, the humiliation still raw in her throat, but her mind already calculating. She opened her phone and reviewed the agenda. Tuesday, 11 a.m., Crane Enterprises, Executive Pitch Suite. She wouldn't be alone. The board would be there. PR heads, legal, investors, the very people Weston tried to impress with his cruelty. What they didn't know was that Naomi had already sent Lucent Guard prototypes weeks ago. What they didn't know was that their in-house tech had failed 3 key penetration tests and her smart glass system passed every one. All she had to do now was show up. But that wasn't enough. Not after tonight. Not after that bill hitting the ground like she belonged beneath it. She didn't just want a deal, she wanted a shift. She wanted every girl with a mop and a dream to see what power looked like reclaimed. Naomi went home that night and didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her laptop and began building the demo that would flip the boardroom on its head. Not just glass, justice, layered into every reflection. Tuesday came like a storm front. The mirrored skyscraper of Crane Enterprises shimmered against the San Francisco sky, its walls the same glass Naomi's team could soon be replacing. But today, she didn't wear gloves or carry a mop. She wore a charcoal gray suit, sharp as her memory, and heels that echoed with purpose. No name tag, no uniform, just presence. The receptionist offered her green tea without asking. "Dr. Naomi James from Lucent Guard," she announced. No one blinked. In the boardroom, Weston was already seated laughing about something with a venture partner, but the moment he looked up and saw her, his expression calcified. For a split second, confusion, then panic. Naomi smiled politely. "Mr. Crane," she said, her voice even. "Pleasure to meet again." His throat bobbed. "You're with Lucent Guard?" he asked, trying to play dumb. Naomi just nodded and took her seat at the head of the table. "We brought a demonstration," she said. "Something very transparent." A slight twitch crossed Weston's jaw, but he didn't speak. Around them, board members leaned forward, curious, and Naomi pressed play on a glass touchpad. The walls around them, Lucent Guard's live prototype panels began to shimmer. A new reflection unfolded. Not theirs, but hers and him, from the gala. The room fell into stunned silence as the smart glass panels played back the scene in crystal clarity. Weston sneering, the $100 bill floating to the floor, the laughter, the humiliation, multiple angles, multiple phones, all synced, all time-stamped. Naomi didn't flinch. She let it play. 30 full seconds of degradation, more than enough for every executive in that room to see exactly who Weston Crane really was when he thought the cameras were on his side. The head of public relations coughed and looked away. A board member leaned forward, suddenly pale. Weston tried to speak. This is a gross violation. But Naomi calmly cut him off. "Of what? Your carefully curated image?" Her tone never rose. "It didn't have to. These clips are already on a timed cloud release. Noon. Unless." She slid a folder across the glass. "Here's our revised contract. Full partnership, public apology, and a binding diversity fund for STEM scholarships." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Or we let the public see how you treat women of color when you think no one's watching." Weston's lips parted, but no words came out. Because for the first time, he understood. The floor girl had just taken the high ground. The folder sat between them, like a loaded weapon. Weston stared at it, jaw clenched, calculating. Around the room, no one moved. Naomi didn't press. She let the silence work, like gravity pulling truth into the open. Finally, Weston reached for the contract, flipping through with shaking fingers. "You want funding, exposure, control," he muttered. "And you'll blackmail me to get it?" Naomi didn't blink. "I don't need to blackmail anyone. I'm offering you a choice." Her voice was clear, steady, aligned with integrity. "Or be exposed by your own reflection." A general counsel leaned in. "Sir, if this leaks, every woman in tech group from here to DC will crucify us." Another voice. "And shareholders will walk. We're already skating thin." Weston's hands trembled as he signed. The moment his pen hit the final line, Naomi tapped her screen. The glass cleared, returning the room to normal. No drama, no footage, just executives suddenly aware of how close they came to collapse. Naomi stood. "You'll issue the apology at 3 p.m. sharp. We'll co-post it across platforms. And the scholarship fund?" She smiled. "Make it big enough to hurt." Weston didn't respond. Couldn't, because everyone in that room now saw him for what he was. Small. 3 p.m. hit like a lightning strike. Across LinkedIn, Twitter, and every tech blog with a pulse, the same video dropped. Weston Crane, stiff in a press suit, standing beside Naomi James in a bright, sunlit atrium. His voice was rehearsed, but his eyes were hollow. Today, I want to acknowledge a personal failure and introduce a powerful partnership. Naomi didn't speak during his apology. She didn't have to. The footage playing behind them said enough. Edited clips from the gala, captioned with phrases like, "How billionaires treat the invisible," and "She cleaned his floor. Now she owns his future." The final minute featured Naomi walking past the camera to shake hands with underrepresented STEM students, young women, immigrants, first-gen engineers who would now be fully funded by the Weston Crane Diversity Initiative. Her company, Lucent Guard, was tagged in every post. By evening, their servers were crashing from investor traffic. Weston's followers were split between groveling defenders and those demanding his resignation. But the internet wasn't talking about him anymore. They were talking about her, the woman who wore silence like armor, the CEO who didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. And tomorrow, Naomi would be speaking on stage at TechFront, not invited. Headlining. The TechFront stage was packed press. Founders, VCs, students, but all eyes turned when Naomi stepped into the spotlight. She didn't open with her credentials, her degrees, or her company's breakthroughs. She opened with a story. 2 weeks ago, she began, I was on my knees, polishing the floor of a room like this while a man laughed in my face. The silence that followed was thunderous. Naomi continued, calm and razor-sharp. He thought my value ended where his perception began, but perception is fragile. Reflection is power. She gestured to the Lucent Guard glass now installed on stage behind her, displaying live feeds from schools and labs where her smart glass was already in use. We build technology that sees what others miss, she said, including people. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Headlines formed in real time. MIT engineer outsmarts billionaire bully. Janitor turned. CEO wipes floor with tech elite. Naomi didn't bask in it. She stayed steady, poised. She knew her win wasn't just hers, it was shared by every person ever dismissed, underestimated, or told to stay silent. In the lobby, the very same guests who once laughed behind phones now scrambled to take selfies with her. But Naomi didn't pause for fans. She had another meeting with Congress. 6 months later, a ribbon was cut outside a new research lab at Eastwood STEM Academy, funded entirely by the Crane apology deal. Naomi stood beside a dozen teenage girls, all scholars under the Lucent Guard Diversity Initiative. The same hands that once held a mop now held patents and power. Inside the glass building, students were experimenting with the very technology Naomi created, panels that responded to movement, emotion, even intention. It doesn't just reflect you, one girl said. It recognizes you, Naomi smiled. That was the point. Across the country, headlines had faded. Weston Crane's face all but vanished from the public eye. But Lucent Guard? It was thriving, used in hospitals, airports, even government buildings. Naomi didn't chase revenge. She architected a world where people like her could never be invisible again. And the final touch? In the lobby of Lucent Guard HQ, a single artifact hangs in a custom-lit case, the very mop she used that night. Below it, a brass plaque reads, "Let them laugh, then let them learn." As Naomi walks past it each morning, her reflection shines in the smart glass walls, not bent, not hidden, full and clear. This time, when people stare, it's only in awe. If that moment gave you chills, hit subscribe. We tell the stories they never thought you'd hear.